Welcome, everybody. Bobby Umar here, and we're starting the Power Connection broadcast this morning. Thanks so much for joining us. And we're starting on time, which is very exciting. Glad to have you all join us today. So today we're going to talk to Marc Champagnes. Hey, good morning, everybody.
Hello, everyone. Awesome to be here.
I'm delighted.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I'm delighted to have you. It's going to be fantastic. And our topic today is decluttering the mind. To have better mental fitness. So that's kind of the general idea for today. And Marc Champagne is definitely a mental fitness advocate. He also has a fantastic podcast, and he's really an awesome guy to work with. So I'm very excited to have him here. If you are joining us, a few logistics again. So we want to engage you all. So please, comment below and engage us with the comments. So, there's different things you can do. So one is, let us know where you're from. Are you from Africa, North America, South America, Asia, Europe, Australia? That's the first thing. The other thing you can do is, hey, just do, if you can say hello and talk to the people on the feed. You can tag people to bring them part of the conversation. You can also, if you're liking what you're hearing, you can like, clap, heart, light bulb, and curious face the broadcast as it's going along. And if you love this broadcast and you got a lot out of it, by all means, please feel free to share it with your networks, put on your own pages. You can tag people there and let people know, all the great stuff that we're talking about. So that's really the basic gist. But we want to hear from you. We want to hear, and also let us know if you hear us or you don't hear us or it's scratchy, because again, that's something that here's someone already. Brenda from Metro Detroit. Can you see it too, Marc?
I can. Yeah. Welcome, Brenda.
All right. So people are coming. That's fantastic. So we love comments. We love engagement. We love all your thoughts. And this is also a chance for you to ask questions about what we're talking about. So you have a specific question on how to become better with your mental fitness, better with using your mindset, better with with what we're trying to help people with. Then please ask questions. Marc is very passionate about this. So let's get right into it, Marc, and maybe start by just telling people a bit about yourself and your background, maybe a bit of your story, and
Sure.
then you can kind of dive into the topic at hand and why it's important. And then I'll start throwing in some follow-up questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Well, you mentioned I'm pretty passionate about mental fitness, which is very true. And the reason for this is because I've had a practice, a morning routine that involved journaling and meditation and just some quiet time before the wildness of the day would start for probably about 8-10 years now, which led to me actually starting or co-founding a company specifically for journaling, and started an app that helped guide people through that process. You can kind of think of like a Headspace meets TED Talks type of style, bringing in inspiration and guiding people through. And while going through that process, really started to see the power of taking time to slow down and ask yourself some pretty powerful questions. And that was echoed with the podcast that I'm running, Behind the Human. The key theme for all of these conversations are always around the fact that the guests seems like they have a lot of clarity in their mind. And my conclusion to that is that they've done things, or they have practices, and they're prioritizing their mind so that they can see clearly, and their mind, if you think of a physical space, is decluttered in the sense. The reason I'm really passionate about that is because I think it's hard to do. It's physically we can see a room, we can see when, like, oh wow, there's a ton of boxes in there. I'm just going to move this for the light. There's a ton of boxes in the room, or I've got clutter on my desk. You can see that, but it's harder to see when relationships are no longer serving you, or beliefs about yourself and others are no longer serving you. It's like, how do you see that and let that go?
So in terms of, I find decluttering my mind to be really a big challenge. I've been told by my own therapist when I was trying to deal with food issues is to try to go in the shower and just not think about anything, right? So I can't think about. I often will sing a song in my head. There's always a song in my head. Like that's part of that's my whole life. But also thinking about my to-do list, what I need to do. Like I'm thinking, and she's like, try to just focus on the water on your skin and the soap in your face, and oh my gosh, I find that incredibly hard.
Yeah.
Why is it? Why is it so hard for me to do this?
Well, I think I mean, A, you're not alone, but I think the biggest misconception on any of these types of practices is that they're prescriptive, right? So for you, maybe, shower, running water on your face isn't the thing that's going to work for you.
Mhm.
So if you take even 5 minutes and I call this the happy list, and this doesn't involve narcotics or anything like that. So it's, like list out 10 things in your world, activities or things that you can do that, no matter what, will put a smile on your face or make you feel good. And then now you're out of the prescription mode. Like maybe meditation is one of those things. Like for me, it is, journaling is, going to an art gallery is, reading books, podcasts. Like those are the things that I know will positively fuel my mind and can change my mindset in an instant. But it also breaks you away from the autopilot, all the stimulus that we're getting hit with all the time, right? Which is cluttering. So I find it's just, it has to work, right? It has to work for you personally. And then the more that these things are coming into your life and you're doing these more and more, then all of a sudden you start seeing what's bothering you, or you start seeing and hearing the chatter or the clutter, and you have the opportunity to do something and make a different decision and stop it or reframe it or something like that.
And how do you use this type of philosophy to maybe help in individuals and organizations? I mean, is it something that you're trying to do in terms of helping people and companies out there? I mean, we're on LinkedIn, right? So like our professionals out there need better decluttering of their minds. So how can you help? How do you normally help them?
Totally. Well, I mean, and this is why I started the podcast. The podcast, I mean, I'm not, you would think that I'm interviewing, yoga instructors and meditation coaches, which there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm not. I'm interviewing executives from Lego and LinkedIn and VaynerMedia and Google for the sheer purpose, for exactly what you just described, because they're all doing these types of things. It's just no one knows about it. So Lego, for example, I had interviewed great guy, Lauren, who was at the time chief operating officer. Now he runs people essentially for Lego Global. And, he had a ton of different practices, just even going from, I used to work in the corporate world as well. I'm very familiar with the back-to-back meeting scenario and running from one room to the next. And that's his reality as well. But he would just literally take the last 5 steps before getting into the next meeting and just pay attention to those 5 steps, take a couple breaths, and just let the last meeting go. And now he's coming in full on present for the next one. No devices, just being there and listening. Just small things.
So you mentioned devices. Let's talk about that. Devices are a really, really interesting thing. And I'm also a big believer in this too. So one of the things I've worked on this year is I'm talking about the future of connection. I'm all about, this is the power of connection chat, right? So I'm all about the power of connection. And I think connection, social media and tech have greatly amplified connection, but it's also a greatly complicated connection.
Oh, I agree.
And so, the integration of these things in our lives is going to be a big challenge. So, maybe you can talk a bit about technology and what are some of the challenges there, and what are some of your thoughts around dealing with that?
I'm happy you brought that up, because I mean, I used to get this all the time, because we created an app that ended up reaching something like 86 million people.
Yes.
That was fantastic in the sense of accessing people and reach, but at the same time, we're creating a mindfulness app with technology that is creating a lot of the issues in the first place. So, my point on this is that I'm a huge fan, actually, of technology and everything that it's bringing. The fact that we're sitting here and able to
right here, exactly,
communicate with people, like there's tremendous benefits if you're able to reframe your relationship with your technology, and kind of just like getting your mind to work for you, getting your technology to work for you. And there's, I've seen this with guests on the show, but it's something I've also personally adopted. It doesn't have to be hard or complicated. Something as simple as even just reworking your notifications on your phone and making sure, like, I don't have any number badges on any social media apps. My social media apps are 3 screens deep on my iPhone. So whenever I unlock my phone, I'm typically on the first screen, which is all mind and body type apps, or apps where if I go in, they're not endless. And I'll steal this term from Jake Knapp, who is an author of Sprint, but they're not infinity pools where just endless scrolling is possible.
Mm-hmm.
So, then it just quickly, and that doesn't take that long. Or even your email, right? Like if you decide to go into your email, your Slack on your own terms, then you can be in there, you can be super productive, get things done, and you're not being interrupted by that throughout the day.
Right. And I remember even back in the day when technology first, I noticed the issue or impact of it was the you got mail, or when email first came, a nice of Outlook, and you have like a oh, mail, what is that?
Totally.
And that was the start. That was just one thing, and now there's like literally dozens and dozens of things. And so one of the things I did last year, 2019, actually in January, was I turned off all my notifications.
Yeah.
So what happened for me? I turned them all off except for a text, a WhatsApp message, and I did turn and Slack, because I did it like for the workday. Like I had Slack notification off during the evening, but during the workday it was on. So what that meant was there wasn't a distraction of Twitter replies, Facebook comments, LinkedIn comments, Instagram stuff. And what was great was what I found was as I went into each app, when I did go to Facebook or did go to LinkedIn, I went in with intention.
Exactly.
I'm going in to check my messages to see what's going on, engage people, and then I'm going to leave. And as soon as I leave, I'll get no more responses, which that was actually great for my focus and for my intention in terms of what I was trying to do.
Yeah. But even Slack, I mean, I challenge you to even flip those off, because I bet that, if you're not replying to that question or whatever it is within 30 seconds, like the world and the life will still go on, and you won't be distracted. And when you go in, though, the next time, to your point, with intention, you're even more focused, right? You're probably even giving a better response or better thought to it. So, but I get it. Like it's hard and it was hard for me as well. So even, people don't have to go to extremes. Just start with social media or start with one of them and even play around with it. I've done it on Instagram where I've turned the badges off and then turned them back on, and you can feel that immediately. It feels like you're being pulled around and controlled.
So I'm here with Marc Champagne, and we're talking about decluttering the mind and improving your mental fitness. And he's already challenged me to stop my Slack notifications. This guy is on me. All right, but I'm bugging you, but it's great. If you are joining us, feel free to share questions and let us know what your thoughts are. Engage people in the feed, and just let's share a bit about who you are, where you're coming from. We see here that Richard's in here. Good morning, Richard. Christiana's here. Maureen's here. That's awesome, which is great. Let me talk briefly about Slack before I get to the first question by Brenda. Okay, so you said to turn off Slack, but here's the thing. I have a brand of being very responsive, and so when it comes to Slack, particularly, I only turn it on. So, for example, on my laptop, I only put Slack on when I'm ready to get to work. It's not on. It's not on. So I don't get any of those notifications. I turn it on when I'm ready to work, and so I'm doing my work, whether it's on PowerPoint or preparing a presentation or checking emails, and then as soon as I get Slack things, I try to make myself accessible for my team. So that's why I leave it on. But otherwise, it's not really. You're right though. It does distract me in the evening. Sometimes I'm like with my with in the evening when the kids are practicing, or I'm just like with my wife watching TV. So the Slack message, well, what's that? And so that is distracting. Although I think I've eliminated about 90%, so I'm still there. But I appreciate that. It's an interesting thing, because you're right. I mean, my wife will struggle with it, where she gets a text and she feels like she has to respond right away. I'm like, you don't have to respond right away, like especially when we're having dinner. Like that one really bugs me. We're having dinner and she pulls the phone out. Like, it's okay. It's like, you can get to it after dinner. Like I get Slack message during dinner, but I'm eating dinner. Like I've been training my mind to not respond to these things.
Yeah, well, and and good for you. And I'm doing my best on this as well. But the reality of the situation too, the more I mean, and I know you've been doing a lot around food and diet and whatnot. But so the relation I make is, if you're gonna have the food that you can't or aren't eating in the house, it's much harder, right? So we're just wired willpower. We can't rely on willpower. I mean, we can only go so far, and it's funny if you start paying attention to it. The longer you go into the day, the less willpower you have, right? So, the way that I look at all of this stuff is just whatever you can do to set yourself up for success, and that requires the least amount of mental power. Then you can channel that to other things.
Awesome. Okay. Well, we have a question here, and again, if you're joining us, ask questions. A question from Brenda, which is, what are your thoughts on the new iPhone feature that tells you if you've reduced or increased your screen time for the week?
That's a great question.
Good question.
Yeah.
I got thoughts on that too because I tried it.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was interesting when it came out and like, oh, this is insightful. I mean, at first it's, well, what does it actually mean? Is this good, bad? Is it too much time? But I think at least at the onset provides a bit of perspective on, okay, this is where I am spending my time. Am I okay with that? Do I want to change it? But then when it comes to the weekly, for me, I don't know, it's every Sunday, I think it pops up. I don't really, I dismiss it at this point. It's not really having much of an impact, whether it's 29% up or down. I think that where the biggest value is like, where is that time going? So maybe I should be clicking into that or tapping into that more just to see if there's something happening. So long story short, I mean, I think it's great in the sense that we can't make change if we don't know what's going on, right? And there's so many parallels to that, to any of these mental fitness practices on self-awareness. And this is a way at least to see what's happening. But you have to see what's happening and actually engage with that and tap into it.
I think my experience with this has been, I did it, I thought it'd be a good idea. My wife, for example, resisted. And some people resist because they're afraid of the information. They're afraid of what's going to tell them. And that's actually a good sign. Like for example, a lot of my friends in the weight and fitness category, don't want to take a picture. They don't want to weigh themselves. They don't want to check their body fat because they're afraid of what the information will tell them.
Yeah.
They don't want to hear the truth, even though they know the truth. And, my wife knows she's addicted, and people know that they're, unhealthy with their weight. So they don't want that information. So I think that's something that comes into play. And then the second thing is, yes, after a while, it came up so often that I just started dismissing it. And I find it kind of stressful. I was like, okay, well, this notification is bothering me. This is stressing me out. I don't need it. But to your point, the biggest thing is for those who are avoiding the information, and for myself who's dismissing the information, it's the information. So if you actually look, just do it for a month, then spend a couple hours and look at how you spend your time over a month. And then you can say, well, you know what? I realize now, wow, I spend 4 hours a day on Facebook. That's too much. I spent, or in a month, you'll start to say, wow, I spent 100 hours on LinkedIn. You're like, oh my gosh, and in that 100 hours, did I get a job? Did I get business? If you didn't, then maybe there's something you need to think about in terms of how much value that's really adding to your life.
Yeah. Well, and I think so. Brandon just made another point, relating to rewards, and I think that's great, and that's something we can do as well. We don't have to wait for them. We can say, if you want to reduce your time on X app or whatever it is, then you get to the end of the month, and if that happened, going back to that list, you pick what your reward will be, right? And then you're more motivated to actually go through with it. So I think it's a great suggestion, Brenda.
Yeah.
Another question.
So what did she say? She said that personally, I think it should reward you for spending more time on LinkedIn, less on Facebook. Well, I mean, it depends. I mean, you could be on LinkedIn doing crap work, and you can be on Facebook creating tremendous value. It's really all about what you do in those things, right? You could be on LinkedIn saying, I hate this, and I hate that, and I hate that. And then on Facebook, you're like, I love the world, and you're amazing. You can do it. So it depends on what you're doing for the most part. But I appreciate the comment. That's great. Richard also comments, my phone is 90% on all the time on vibrate, and I try to set it on a surface that won't make any noise when it vibrates, like a pad of sticky notes. Okay. When it's on sound, the notification is the mindfulness bell, which others even appreciate as a non-interruptive and calming. Oh, okay.
I love that. I mean, so I'm the same, Richard. Actually the other night, somehow, I don't know if it was taking my phone out of my pocket, it switched on to like full blown sound. And then something came through at one point, because I'm like, I have text and WhatsApp on as well. And it actually terrified me a little bit. I'm like, where's that noise coming from? I don't know what that is.
It's funny. I haven't used those sounds very much, but like I like the alarms that are like like the twinkle sound or the really peaceful alarms. I don't like the ones like so I like that, but I actually haven't used sounds for like when people call me or for when I have a notification. I don't use that, but I think it's good. Another one that I've had 2 or 3 people rave about in terms of using the phone is that they've turned the colors off. They do black and white. Have you heard of this?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
I haven't tried it. I tried it once. I was like, no, that doesn't look very pretty. I like the colors.
That's the point. And yeah. But I mean, like I really respect the design of the phones and whatnot, and I like the visuals. But I get that the whole point is that it is it's ugly and it detracts you from picking it up essentially.
Is that the basic idea?
Yeah, from my understanding, yeah.
Okay. Can you share a bit about? Let's talk about like more specific exercise things that you have done or you tried that have worked. I'd love to learn some of those things. Because again, I'll be very upfront. I struggle with my mind. Another big problem I have is earworms at night when I'm trying to sleep. I have songs in my head all the time. Sometimes I'll wake up at 5 in the morning and then I'll have a song in my head and I can't shake it and I can't sleep for like an hour.
Oh, wow.
Okay. It happens almost every night. This morning it was, I'm going to take my horse to the Old Town Road. I'm going to ride to the... And that was just going in my head in loop, right? Just that phrase.
Wow. Okay.
The horses in the back and I kept doing that over and over again. And this morning I'm in the shower. It's still there. It's in the shower. I'm singing.
Yeah. And now for all of us, it's going to be there. Thanks, Bobby.
No, it's gone. But see, it's gone now. It's gone.
Yeah, for you, not for us. No.
But I don't know how it disappears. Like I don't know. But I mean, that's something I struggle with. And the other thing I struggle with is meditation. Like I know a lot of people talk about it, and they think meditation is amazing. And people, if you're on listening, share some of the stuff you're doing to deal with decluttering your mind. Do you do meditation? What do you do? I'd love to hear from different people out there in the network. But I struggle with that one. I talked to another friend of mine who went on is it vinyasa or the 9-day retreat where you can't talk at all.
Yeah.
And that just freaked me out. I was like, oh, so you just you journal? And they're like, no, you can't write anything. Oh, okay. You read a book? You learn like a philosopher? No, you just nothing for 9 days. Yeah. I was like, oh my God, I could never do that. I can't even handle like a day of that.
Yeah.
But so what are some of the tools and techniques that you use or you recommend for others?
Yeah. Well, so let me just address that point, because I think I'm glad you brought that up, because
okay.
And the reason I talk about all this stuff in the light of mental fitness is because it's easier to relate to physical fitness. But even that example that you provided, that would be like telling someone in the physical world, you know what, you're going to go run an ultra marathon this weekend. Go. And you know what, you're going to do it, and your life is going to be so much better for it, which it may be, but that's not for everyone. But what I see happening in the mental fitness world, then it's, oh, well, I can't do this stuff, or I'm not going to do this stuff. And again, drawing the parallel to exercise, just because you don't like the marathon doesn't mean that there's no other exercise to do, right?
Right.
So like, just to set the stage a bit, because what I'm trying to get out there, like, I'm not wearing a robe, I'm not meditating on these majestic mountain tops.
Although you could.
I could.
That would be fun.
It would be
get a picture of that, man.
Totally. But I'm trying to figure out, like, we're here in Toronto, it's busy, there's a lot going on. How do you find these little moments of stillness throughout your day so that you're not working towards only the big vacation to have to completely unplug? Like, how can you have those micro moments of downtime? And again, like, going back to the list, right? Like, really identifying 5 or 10 things that you can do. Because I can talk, like, journaling is obviously a big one for me, and meditation is, I struggle, like, with you as well, like, because I feel like it's hard to feel the benefits short term, long term, and the science is there to prove that. But that's one I struggle with. Breath work, though, So Wim Hof, for example, you can search his method. That is a real.
Sorry, can you spell that, please?
Yeah, Wim Hof. It's WIM,
Okay.
and I think it's just HOF.
Okay.
I mean, Google will correct all that for you.
Sure,
He'll come up. He's been quite popular on the podcast circuit recently, and it's great. Like, because you physically feel a response after. I did it this morning before coming into the office. It's just, you know, a certain type of breathing, and it really focuses your mind to count your breaths. So right away, you can only focus on one thing. And you physically feel the differences of, you know, just energizing your body. But ironically, at the very end, I usually feel very calm and still, and it feels quiet in my mind. So, I mean, that's one thing. Journaling, no, like that's a practice that I would encourage everyone to just drop any definition you might have on that. You know, when we started the app about 4 years ago, the common comment I used to always get was like, "Oh, you're talking about the 12-year-old girl that writes in her diary about the boy at school." And again, nothing wrong with that, but no, not necessarily. I'm talking about just taking a bit of a pause and asking some questions. What, you know, and it doesn't have to be complicated. What's my intention today? How do I want to feel today? And you don't have to. You can write it down in a notebook. You can do it on your phone, or you can just think about it on the way into your commute or whatever it is. So that's why I'm really passionate about dropping the definitions, because for me, something like journaling, you know, you can journal on social media if you're sharing how you're feeling authentically, not the highlight reel, obviously, but just taking a bit of time, like we're Friday.
Oh, sorry, you froze.
Friday, and I asked 3 questions. 1 is, what did I learn this week? 2, what would I have changed this week? And what was awesome? And it's just a way to stop and break from the week and then roll into the weekend and feel like you've accomplished something, which we all have, right? So and it's unbelievable. I call these things PhD Fridays, because what you learn about yourself and the answers you're able to come up with in terms of potentially problems or things that you've been trying to solve, you have them all. It's instead of reaching for the next kind of self-help book or next podcast, just ask some of these questions, and the answers are there as you keep decluttering.
And one thing I'll add is, you talked about journaling and different things and getting into the definitions. But I think the general idea would be to find a way to take what's in here and put it somewhere out there. So whether you do it on your phone, or on your laptop, or on a physical book, getting that out there, as opposed to, because I think you kind of mentioned leaving your head and think about it. I don't want to do that. I kind of want to get it out of here. And I find that when I write or I put them in, or often I'll do like a Facebook post and just like, oh, here's what I'm thinking, and I put it out there, or I'll tweet something. That type of stuff helps me to process and unload the stuff that's in my head.
Yeah, of course. And again, it's whatever works for you. But if you, like, I personally, you know, when there's something that's bothering me, just physically writing out, you know, what is worrying me, and just writing that out 90+% of the time. First of all, those are narratives running in our mind, and almost 100% of the time, those things aren't coming to fruition. So just writing them out releases it right away. And typically that in itself will help that whole scenario. And then if you follow that up with a couple gratitude type questions, or like really living in the present moment, the fact that, you know, things could be a lot worse. Like, we're even just now, we're connected. I've got 2 devices going. I mean, most people in the world don't even have internet, right? So, you know, it's just, I think, grounding yourself with perspective, because when you get into that state of mind, it's impossible to be in that survival state of mind. You can't be in both of those states, and you can't be grateful, upset, and angry all at the same time.
Right.
I'm stealing that from Tony Robbins. I'm pretty sure he says that in his magical events, but it works. I mean, it's worked for me, and it's worked for 150 of the podcast guests. It's by far the consistent that comes up.
And I'm going to switch gears a bit. So again, rejoice, join us. Marc Champagnes is talking about, sorry, I forgot not the mindset. What's the word we're using?
Decluttering our mind.
Decluttering the mind. That's right.
Yeah.
Decluttering the mind. So we're decluttering the mind, and sharing his tips and tricks and experience with this entire journey. And I've shared kind of the different ways in which my mind is full of stuff. So the other one that my mind gets full of, and a lot of people also struggle with this, is social media comments that upset them. So whether it's cyberbullying or gaslighting people, or people who say negative comments, haters, trolls, whatever you call it. When I have, and even I have, even with my friends, if I have a kind of a deep or maybe an incendiary discussion with a friend of mine on Facebook, I'm thinking about how to respond, and it's just bothering me, and it's like it. And sometimes I'll avoid going on Facebook, or I'll go avoid on Twitter, and then so for me, I think that's a bit of a challenge for me, because I do get a little bit nervous, and it gets to me. But I also spend a lot of time helping people work with not the friends who bother you, but more the cyberbullies and the trolls and things like that. I have my own kind of philosophy on helping people manage that type of stuff. What are your thoughts on that, and how it actually clutters their mind?
So friends, or like just comments in general?
Well, I'd like to maybe focus on two. So let's say, people that are saying things that are really starting to get in your head, and you want to try to deal with it and resolve it. And the second one is then what happens when you deal with trolls or haters on social media.
Yeah. Okay. So let's do the trolls. Cause I was the guy doing replying to the app reviews on Apple, on the Apple App Store, which is, I used to look at the team saying, all right, I'm going in deep, guys, just you got to prepare, because you have to think, like, from our side of things, we were the small team giving it our all, right? And you put something out and it's never enough, especially in the app world. Especially we're so used to everything being free and this and that. So then you get these reviews coming in, and people can get real mean on these things, right? So the way that I used to handle that is, because like you, I wanted to engage and at least thank them. And I think acknowledge, I wouldn't do this in the comment, but mentally I was doing this, is that the comment or whatever is being said, whenever it's a negative type thing, that's not a personal attack on me or our team. That's coming from something else, that it's a reflection, or it's a mirror in their life. And again, I'm not saying that back, but I think just knowing that changes the dynamic in my own head on getting stressed out about that. The other thing, going back to the that happy list, I would have a list of awesome comments, and this changed my life, and that was always accessible for the end of that kind of procedure, let's call it. Again, just ending on gratitude, right? Wow, like we are making a difference, and there's great people out in this world. And same thing with emails that come in. I got one this morning from an incredible person from the We Movement team here in Toronto.
Sure.
Just like just well written, really nice words, and I flagged that in my inbox, because I know that I'm going to get something that's going to irritate me, so I can go back to that email and read that and put me in a different state of mind. I think friends, family, that's a tough one, because, but it links perfectly to this topic of decluttering your mind, because one of the things that clutters your mind are relationships. And there's no easy way, I think, to handle this, other than to sit down yourself and ask the question, which relationships are fueling me, and which relationships are sucking energy from my life. And I think, again, going back to the physical room example, at one point that couch may not be serving the room anymore, or it's worn out, and you have to replace it. And it's okay to do that with relationships as well. Like, it's okay to be grateful that, at one point, maybe 5-10 years of that relationship was super valuable. You got a lot out of it on both sides. And it doesn't have to be this thing, that's it, we're breaking up. It doesn't have to be this big moment, but you can mentally decide that I'm not giving the attention and the space as I used to for that relationship. And it'll just, I think, just naturally kind of dissolve. And as soon as that happens, it just opens up this wave of relief. in your mind. You know what? I'm not trying to really hold on to this, and I'm not trying to tiptoe around all this stuff. It's just not, it's not worth it. It's not healthy for my mind, and who knows what's going on the other side. But just taking some time to think about that could be really helpful.
That's great. Let me take that even more further to challenge you.
Sure.
So now it's your boss or your best friend or your wife or your child or your mom. They have to have this conversation with that you're avoiding, and it's in your head and you can't shake it. And we all have these. Like I have conversations with my wife that have been in my head for a month that I haven't got to, and I'm like, at some point I want to really bring this up with my kids. Something I want to bring up. My mom, your boss. It's very. I have an email from a friend from 5 days ago. I haven't addressed because I'm like, it's something I definitely want to address, but I've been ignoring it because I've been so busy and overwhelmed. So those things are also in my head. So how do you approach those things?
Well, I think first, I mean, it seems like you're identifying them, but for most people, they're not identified. And a good question is, and this was left by Jamie Wheel from the Flow Genome Project on the podcast. And I remember when he left that, it kind of stepped me back. He said, what are you pretending not to know? And it made me think we all have something that like we know that that's happening, but we're ignoring it in some capacity. And potentially this happens for years, right? And then it's ignored, and it's ignored. Into your point, it's taking up mental real estate because because you haven't dealt with it, but it's in your mind and it just keeps circulating and narratives start developing and it's stressing you out at the end of the day, right? So I think, if you know what it is, then it's like one of those ripping the Band-Aids off, just kind of address it. But if you don't, just again, taking even 3 to 5 minutes to answer that question, like what right now in your life, career, family, your health, am I pretending that I'm not, eating a certain amount of sugar every day? Like that's a legit question on my side that my wife reminds me of. But yeah, I mean, I think it's being honest with yourself, but you can't take the next step if you don't know what you're ignoring.
Right. Okay. So, and again, we were talking to Marc Champagne about decluttering the mind and how it can actually help you in your life. What happens around this point is people start showing up. If you have more questions, you're welcome to ask questions. If you have questions after this broadcast over, you can put them in the comments and tag us, and maybe we'll have a chance to answer them, which would be great. Marc, can you share a bit about where people can reach you if they want to get in touch with you, and what some of the projects you want to promote?
Yeah, no, thank you, and thank you for the authentic and real chat. I mean, I think this stuff's important, and the more we talk about it, the more it'll be just as common as going for a run or doing a spin class. Like all these type of wellness practices, they're so helpful. Most of them are free, which is nice. So people can follow. I mean, the best place is just at Behind the Human on Instagram, and that's the podcast as well. Again, if you probably haven't been able to pick up, I mean, the gist of it is I'm interviewing people and unpacking their stories and mental fitness practices that personally and professionally keep them at the top of their game. And, from all walks of life, entrepreneurs, executives, chefs, designers. So it's always a different story. And I pull their questions and I pull the things that help them. So yeah, shoot me a message, leave a review, whatever. I'm accessible.
That's amazing. Well, listen, everyone else, thanks so much for joining us. If you have any future questions about decluttering the mind, you can put them in the feed. By all means, add them to the comments. We'd love to hear from you. If you like what you're hearing, tag people, share this on your page. We'd love to get people to know more about what we're doing. Again, I have not been very effective with my normal Power Connection chats. Normally, they're typically Monday, Wednesday, Friday mornings around 8:45 a.m. I have not. It's been a bit overwhelming coming back from the holidays, but now I'm getting in my groove now, and where I'm already booking some really awesome people for interviews as well as delivering my own content around leadership, employee engagement, personal branding, networking, public speaking, things like that. So, if you do want to join us, please do check us out on my feed every morning around 8:45 a.m. Across all the platforms, and I'd love to have you. And if you know anybody that'd be a good guest, an influencer or a speaker, someone who's got great expertise in an area, send them my way. I'd love to kind of hear from you. In the meantime, Marc, have yourself a wonderful weekend. Thanks so much for joining us, and really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right, guys, have fun, take care, and we'll see you soon.